The Dow Jones sees its worst week since June of 2022 after Silicon Valley Bank's failure sends shockwaves through the banking sector and sparks fears of a contagion. U.S. futures, meanwhile, jump after regulators announced a plan to backstop depositors. Asian markets largely lower, tracking global cues. The SGX Nifty 2 signals a weak start for the Indian market. Close on the heels of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, crypto-focused lender Signature Bank shuts down. Regulators step in to backstop depositors and offer term funding to prevent a contagion effect. However, they say taxpayers will not have to fund the relief measures. The Adani Group repays $2.15 billion worth of share-backed financing ahead of the deadline. A $500 million loan taken for the acquisition of Ambuja Cements is also paid for ahead of time. And a CNBC-TV18 news break is confirmed. The RBI approves the appointment of IndusInd Bank Sumant Katpalia as MD and CEO for 2 years, while Tech Mahindra picks former Infosys President Mohit Joshi to take over as the MD and CEO from CP Gurnani in December. The RBI mandated 3-year lock-in period for Yes Bank shareholders ends, and nearly 38% of the total stake in the bank will be available to be sold from today's trading session. Hi guys, a very good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra Parekh. Those are all of the top headlines that we're tracking as we get into this fresh trading week, and what a hectic week for us to start this trading week. There's so much happening on the global front as far as SVB's collapse is concerned. So we'll talk about all of that in just a bit. But first up, let's take a look at what's happening to the Asian markets after we got that weak handover from Wall Street. So most of them largely lower. And losses this morning are led by the Nikkei market. The Japanese market is down 1.7%. So that one definitely looking the weakest. But the Straits is down 1% as well. You have Taiwan trading with a 1% cut. What's holding up is the Hong Kong market. That's seeing a gain of over 1%. So that one is looking good. And the other market which is managing to trade in the green is the Chinese market. So the Shanghai market also up around 0.7%. But barring that, you are seeing cuts across the Asian markets. Not quite as bad as what we saw on Wall Street. But Asia is definitely starting largely on the back foot. The SGX Nifty will be up for you. It is indicating that we will get a weak start, around 50 points in the red. But this is after the sharp sell-off that we saw in Friday's trading session and, on Thursday as well. So right now, we do have a 54-point downtick on the SGX Nifty. So that's what's going on in the Asian markets. But let's talk about the US actually, because that's where all the action really came through. Wall Street ended Friday's trading session sharply lower as contagion fears continue to dominate with the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. So all three major indices posted weekly losses of nearly 5%. The Dow Jones actually saw its worst week that we've seen since June of 2022, and only a couple of days after the collapse of SVB, crypto-focused lender Signature Bank also shut down. So regulators have now stepped in to prevent a contagion and systemic panic by announcing a plan to backstop depositors with both of these banks, who will now have full access to their deposits. So that is the US regulator stepping in to, safeguard depositors. But the risk of a contagion and the fear of a contagion is what is really dominating sentiment on Wall Street. The US Treasury, Federal Reserve and the FDIC in a joint statement said that no losses associated with the resolution of Silicon Valley Bank as well as Signature Bank will be borne by the taxpayer. They stated, however, that shareholders and certain unsecured debt holders will not be protected. In fact, the regulators also said that they would make available additional funding to depository institutions in order to help assure that banks have the ability to meet the need of the depositors. So that is, some important news that came through. It's actually on the back of this that you're seeing a lot of the US markets now recover in the futures market. So the Dow Jones is up around 0.7% in the futures market right now. But let's also listen to comments from US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse.
I will just say you mentioned Silicon Valley Bank. There are recent developments that concern a few banks that I'm monitoring very carefully. And when banks experience financial losses, it is and should be a matter of concern.
The developments at SVB. That is the word from the US Treasury Secretary. But let's also listen to some important comments which came through from Jeremy Siegel on the SVB fallout. Listen in.
SVB changes the entire picture, in my opinion. As you know, I've been criticizing the Fed. I think that they've been moving the rate up too fast, too high. I certainly have to say I didn't expect the bank to fail, but I felt that there was going to be serious consequences from their action, and certainly last 3 days we've seen some of those consequences.
All right, the other big cue that we were tracking from Wall Street, and we were talking about all this all through last week, but it just got completely overshadowed by what's happening on with the SVB collapse, is that the jobs report also came through. So CNBC's Rick Santelli is here to break down what the February jobs report looks like this time around.
Non-farm payrolls, 311,000. 311,000. And if you look at manufacturing payrolls, they were down 4,000. 2-month net revision is minus 34,000, minus 34,000. And if you consider the unemployment rate, it moved up to 3.6. 3.6 from 3.4, which happened to have been a 53-year low. If you look at average hourly earnings month to month, 0.2%. Now, if you look at average hourly earnings at 0.2, that is the smallest month-over-month change since February when it was unchanged. If we look at year over year, it is 4.6. 4.6. Now, that indeed is better than a still unrevised 4.4, and 4.4 was the lowest year over year since July of 21. Average work week, 34.5, 34.5. And we're expecting 34.6, so that is a bit smaller than expected. And last month's 34.7 moved to 34.6. Labor force participation, 62.5. 1/10 better than expected and 1/10 better than the rear view mirror. And 62.5 is the best rate since 62.6 in March of 2020. And if we look at the underemployment rate, or U6, it is 6.8. I do want to point out, at the end of last year, this series was at 6.5, which was the lowest since 1994 record keeping.
Rick, thanks a lot for bringing us all of the highlights. So the U.S. non-farm payrolls coming at 311,000 is definitely above what the street was estimating this time around. But let's also listen to Liz Ann Saunders of Charles Schwab as she speaks on the SVB fallout as well as the latest jobs report. Listen in.
It's hard to separate the effect of the jobs report on the change in expectations for a 50 basis point hike and obviously the SVB situation. I think it may have a bit more to do with the latter than the former, but I think this is clearly an example of something breaking. You know, the old adage of the Fed tightens until something breaks, and there's lags between changes in monetary policy, and the hiking campaign started a year ago, and this is one of them. There is likely more impact coming from what has happened already. And I think that, the Fed and Powell himself are perfectly aware of that. They talk quite often about the fact that inflation is inherently a lagging indicator and that the effects of changes in monetary policy are in the future.
Hey guys, welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast here on CNBC TV18. We were just going through the global setup. So let's now talk about how all of those cues can impact our own markets, as well as some of the individual stocks that you should have on your radar ahead of the trading session. We have Mangalam, Vivek, as well as Surbi joining us to take you through the trade setup this morning. Guys, a very good morning to all of you. And Vivek, let me come across to you first. We were going through the global picture. Of course, there's so much happening with the SVB fallout as well. But looks like, our own trade session will obviously definitely be dominated by that as well.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's all about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse and what exactly is the fallout, what is going to be the contagion effect, and what are the steps that the regulators are taking, to actually go ahead and contain this particular fallout. But, on the back of that, the global trade handover has been extremely weak. All U.S. indices have given a negative follow-on, effect as far as Friday's selling was concerned. Also, when you're talking about European markets, once again, quite a weak handover there as well. FTSE, in fact, falling almost 1.7%. Crude oil prices on the back of higher U.S. inventory buildup actually saw a bit of gain. 1.5% higher as far as Brent futures were concerned, and WTI futures up almost 1.3%. Now, coming to own Indian markets, actually what happened was that last week was a bit of an underperformance that continued, and the sectors that actually did well was the PSU utility space, the oil and gas space, as well as the capital goods space. But on the other hand, Metals, IT services, and autos were significant laggards in the week gone by. So it requires to be seen whether this particular trend continues as well. And as you rightly mentioned, the SGX Nifty and the Asian markets, all of them take cues from the Silicon Valley Bank fallout, and that's going to be the key to watch out for today's trading session.
All right, Vivek, thanks a lot for bringing us all of those cues. But let's also talk about the individual stocks that could be in focus in today's trading session. Surbhi is here with that entire list. Good morning, Surbhi.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for that. So I have a few stocks that are on my radar today. Adani Group stocks will be in focus today as they prepay share-backed debt worth $2.5 billion ahead of its deadline and also prepay $500 million taken for financing of Ambuja acquisition. Next is IndusInd Bank, where the RBI approves reappointment of Sumant Katpalia as MD and CEO for the bank for another 2 years. ICICI Bank, where RBI granted time till September 9th, 2024 to reduce its stake in ICICI Lombard General Insurance. Tech Mahindra, where the company appoints Mohit Joshi as MD and CEO for another 5 years, effective December 20, 2023. Godrej Properties, the company acquires 28 acres of land in Bangalore. Welspun Corp, where the company's subsidiary Welspun Metallics has approved multiple export orders for pig iron, which will be executed in another 2 months. And lastly, Nazara Tech, where two of its step-down subsidiaries, Kidopia and MediaWorks, hold cash balances at Silicon Valley Bank to the tune of 64 crores.
All right, Surbhi, thanks a lot for getting us all of those individual stocks. Finally, let's also talk about cues from the futures and options space. Mangalam joins in with that. Mangalam, very weak cues coming in after, what was already a weak session on Friday.
Yes, it was a weak session on Friday. No two ways about that, Pavitra. In fact, the Nifty has fallen below the 200-day moving average of 17,434. But importantly, now, we have held on to a couple of lows. Feb 1st, which is the budget day low of 17,353, something we'll be watching out for. Feb 28th, which was, last Monday, where the Nifty, after that, we rallied from 17,255. And on Friday itself, we bounced back a good 90 points from the lows of 17,324 itself. In that, the SGX Nifty has actually now moved off lows. It's down only about 36 odd points, 30 points as we speak, and that's primarily because there is a sharp surge in US futures as regulators have announced a bit of a backstop for SVB depositors itself. So to that extent, it will be very interesting to see whether we see some short covering today or not. Good news coming in on the Adani front and crude oil prices being low too. In the cash market, the FI sold over 2,000 odd crores. In index futures, they sold 1,600 crores. They added about 11,000 shorts. And as a result of which, in just 4 trading sessions, from 26%, the FII longs have fallen all the way down to 16%. So shorts are back in the system. Not just that, the FIs have sold almost 2 lakh calls as well. That's twice the number of puts that they've sold. And if you just take a look at the calls that they've sold, 17,500 call, extremely active for a premium of 60 odd rupees. We have 17,400 call, extremely active for a premium of 100 odd rupees, telling you levels upwards of 7,500 could face some bit of resistance. But at the same time, put writers were active at 17,400 as well for a premium of 90 odd rupees, telling you that 17,310 to 17,320 could be a bit of a support. So to that extent, again, will the SGX Nifty dip be bought into or not? The put call ratio sub 0.9, closer to oversold levels, and at the same time, the Nifty Bank has its support at the 200-day exponential moving average, just a few hundred points below where it is right now, 40,080, important psychological support as well. Well, we have fallen. The SGX Nifty indicates a bit of a further decline, but how much of that is already in the price, and could we see some short covering or not is the big question.
That is the big question. So let's see how that plays out. Mangalam, thanks a lot for getting us all of those cues. We do need to get into a short break on that note, but as we've welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and as promised, let's talk about the commodity space now. Manisha joins us for a quick update as always. Manisha, good morning. We were just going through all of the action in the equity markets, but take us through what's going on with the commodities as well.
Pavitra, thank you so much for that. I'll start with the crude oil prices, where we saw 4% of decline in the previous week, but there is some support coming in right now, and this is after the dollar has seen a decline post the U.S. non-farm payroll data. Also, the markets will now watch out for the U.S. CPI numbers on Tuesday, and this is going to be the most watched ahead of the U.S. Fed meeting, which is on 22nd of March. We also have seen strength come back for the metal prices after the dollar decline. So whether it's gold prices trading at a 4-week highs, silver, which has come back to a 2-week highs as well, has been supportive. Also, the U.S. banking crisis could push the U.S. Fed into softening the hawkish stance. That is supportive for the precious metal prices also. Within the metal space, it is steel and iron ore, which are trading at an 8-month highs right now, as the markets await further China stimulus measures to come in as early as in the next week itself.
All right, Manisha, thanks a lot for filling us in with all of that action from the commodity markets. But with that, we are going to bring you some updates from the much-awaited Oscars 2023. India made history at the 95th Academy Awards as The Elephant Whisperers, directed by Kartiki Gonsalves, bagged the Oscar for the Best Documentary Short Subject. The story revolves around a couple in South India who devote their lives to caring for an orphaned baby elephant. To add to the excitement, hit dance number Natu Natu from RRR is also in contention for the Best Original Song. Remember, the dance song won the Golden Globe in the same category earlier this year as well. The Indian documentary All That Breathes had also sort of bagged a nomination, but that failed to walk away with the win. And in another moment of pride for Indian movie fans, actor Deepika Padukone is among the presenters at the prestigious awards this year as well. So, of course, we will keep bringing you updates from the Oscars through the day. But on that note, we are going to have to wind down on this edition of Power Breakfast with the news that most Asian markets are in the red, led by the Nikkei, which is down 1.7% right now. The SGX Nifty, however, has cut its losses. It's around 25 points in the red as we speak. Thanks for tuning in. We have Bazaar Morning Call up in 2.